Hi, good day everyone. Once again, this is Christopher Arca from the City of God Ministry. So what I'll be showing you today is how I do my writings straight from the Greek text. So before only I was only using my English base, the NABRE, and also this Patriarchal 1904 Greek New Testament and the Greek Old Testament, the Septuagint. And now what we will be doing is to try to compare the Greek text with the Tyndale Greek New Testament sent to me by Cambridge Publishing. Okay, so basically how is my exegesis being set up? All right, so first of all, I take my structured readings first from the NABRE, because I would be reading by chunk based on the outlines of NABRE. So like here, since I started last night, so that is chapter 13 verses 14 to 23. So before reading there, I do my reading first here in the Patriarchal 1904, because this is where I was already used to in reading the Greek text. And after that, I actually don't use any computer software or anything. I just read it from the hard copies. So I make distinctions from the Patriarchal 1904 if there would be any differences in word placements, spellings, and also punctuation marks, like in verse 14. So this is what I do. First is I jot down verse 14 from NABRE, and now I read both Greek text from the Greek New Testament of the Tyndale and also from the Patriarchal 1904. Now, take a look for instance here. In verse 14. Let the reader understand. That is enclosed in parentheses. Now here in the Patriarchal text, the phrase, the one reading, take note, that is enclosed in hyphens, both here and here. And here in the Tyndale text, it is only in between commas. Where is that? There. The one reading, take note. You have to understand that this phrase, actually the NABRE, follows the Nestle-Aland Greek New Testament. So let me try to remember that detail. Now this, okay, let's try to focus it. So here is my note under verse 14. Let the reader understand. In the NABRE, it is enclosed on a parenthesis, whereas in the Tyndale Greek New Testament and the Nestle-Aland, it seems to be a disrupting phrase in between two commas, and yet part of the sentence. Likewise, in the Patriarchal 1904, the phrase is in between two hyphens or dash, making it an insertion, somehow a break or an addition to the Greek text. Now this is my analysis. In the previous verses, Jesus prophesied the destruction of the temple, cryptic end-time stories, and the coming persecution for the faith, abomination of desolation. This is the one, abomination of desolation. But here in NABRE, this is rendered as desolating abomination. So abomination of desolation, as I rendered from the Greek, would mean the foreign force that would enforce all this violence against the apostles and the faithful. That would be the Jewish authorities, and most probably the Romans, that would inevitably profane the temple and finally torture his apostles and the rest of the followers. flight from Jerusalem is urged rather than defense of the city through misguided messianic hopes. And that is shown in the succeeding verses from 15 to 23 onwards. Okay, so the phrase let the reader understand could have been written by Mark the evangelist to emphasize the importance of becoming aware of the desolating abomination that is happening all around, and being reminded that fighting could be futile and that this abomination has been allowed by God. His reason we do not know, but what we do know is that God will use this to show His power and glory. So that is my comment on verse 14. Now moving on to verse 15 to 16. Okay, so verse 15 to 16. And a person on a housetop must not go down or enter to get anything out of his house. And a person in a field must not return to get his cloak. Okay, so that is NABRE. Okay, so moving on to verses 15 to 16. So this is the Tyndale text. Okay, and moving on to 15 and 16. This is verse 15. And the one on the roof, let him not come down, nor let him enter to take anything from the house of him. Verse 16. And the one in the field, let him not return to the things behind to take the garment of him. Yes, of him. Here in the Patriarchal 1904, in verses 15 to 16, there is not much of a difference in the text, although there is just one difference in the punctuation. So let me show that to you in my notes then. All right, so as I rendered it earlier, as I read it, so this is from the NABRE, and this is how I rendered it in Greek. Verse 15. In NABRE, the end is bracketed. That means, although the translator just added the word because it's not in its original form, in its original place, but actually I also found because here in Tyndale, this is and the one. And if you could remember also in the Patriarchal 1904, here in Patriarchal 1904, there in verse 15, it also shows as well. So for me, it does not need to be bracketed because it's part of the text already. So let me continue that. And the one on the roof, let him not come down, nor let him enter to take anything from the house of him. This is straight from the Greek. So in comparison between Tyndale and the Patriarchal, it shows the same arrangement and punctuation, although the punctuation, this came from the Patriarchal 1904. And taken from NABRE, and a person in a field must not return to get his cloak. And this is from the text. And the one in the field, let him not return to the things behind to take the garment of him. And so these are my notes here. Although these verses could also mean an illustration of what it means to be Jesus' follower by letting go of one's preoccupation and not hold back. Since Jesus previously mentioned one cannot be his follower if he is held up by family and property, so in verse 15 and 16 can also show what could be a man's predisposition when when faced with a troubling situation? Will one hold on to their properties, or would they hold on to their faith and move on? When Jesus also previously described the coming persecution, did he also mean to flee from the coming tribulation? Textually, it really would mean so, because this tribulation will be experienced by both the good and the bad, for Jesus clarified it in the next verses in 20 and 22 of the same chapter. So that's my commentary on verse 15 and 16. Moving on to verses 17 to 18. Yes, and that is from NABRE. Okay, so this is from the Patriarchal text, verse 17 and 18. And this is the Tyndale text. Here in Patriarchal text, the verse 17 ended as a complete sentence. And that goes the same here in the Tyndale text. The verse 18 also is the same. It ended as a complete sentence. Here, you could see here in the Patriarchal text as well. And this is how I rendered the Greek text of 17 and 18. So, from NABRE, woe to pregnant women and nursing mothers in those days. From the Greek, and woe to the ones pregnant and the ones nursing in those days. Verse 18, pray that this does not happen in winter. From the Greek, but pray that it may not come in winter. So this is my notes. We may also be taking the parallel reading with Matthew 24 verses 19 to 20, where in verse 20 Matthew added, or on the Sabbath. In verse 17, Jesus may have illustrated that it could be a warning against pregnant women and nursing mothers, because if ever they would face such predicament, they have to flee, and it would be difficult for them to travel in haste to avoid the coming tribulation. Now, so let me show to you the last verse, because I did not continue yet to verse 20, so we'll be ending here in verse 19. So I took this from NABRE. This is the NABRE text. For those times will have tribulation such as has not been since the beginning of God's creation until now, nor ever will be. It's rather a short sentence. Okay, so moving on verse 19, I would like to show you just a small difference, that after the word tribulation there's a comma, but here in the Tyndale there is no comma after the word tribulation. So short of saying, I think I followed through the Tyndale text here. So let me show it for you. So this is how I rendered the Greek from the NABRE. Okay, this is the translation of NABRE. For those times will have tribulations such as has not been since the beginning of God's creation until now, nor ever will be. From the Greek, I followed the Tyndale text here. Will be for days in those tribulation of such a kind as has not happened from. So I inserted the beginning of creation, which created God until now and by no means shall be. Kinda clunky, but let me explain it to you. As in the day should the tribulation takes place, nothing would be compared to such an event since the point of creation. Should God decide such tribulation, it would be the first to happen. Was it because man's sins was so grave that this should have occurred? that God's wrath would have worked up to the point that this kind of punishment and destruction should be. Our Lord Jesus may have also referred or echoed the prophecy written by Daniel in Daniel chapter 12 verse 1. Okay, so this is Daniel chapter 12 verse 1. I would show you how I rendered it. And at that time Michael, the great prince, shall stand up, that stands over the children of thy people. And there shall be a time of tribulation, such tribulation as has not been from the time that there was a nation on the earth until that time. At that time thy people shall be delivered, even every one that is written in the book. Okay, so others, here is my comment on verse 19. Others would be so worked up thinking that the tribulation would just mean something symbolic in nature, though these words would have pertained to the Romans ransacking Israel, as it definitely would at the time the book of Revelations was being written, when Nero was crucifying every Christian on the road of Jerusalem and burning them on the cross. Such travesty is the one being described. That was the tribulation. Would it occur again, since Daniel talked about Michael the archangel, and Jesus did not even mention any angel standing ground for God's people, and that the people that will be delivered or saved are those whose names are found written in the book of life? But this time, when Jesus came, he is the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through our Lord. Every believer who believes in our Lord will thus be saved and have life eternal. The book of life is in the palm of our Lord. He is life eternal. The time will come when Jesus will come back in all his glory, and this time save those who chose to believe in him, to be the sheep of his flock. Okay, so basically that is how I do my exegesis writing here. Okay, so this one is just for the Gospel of Mark. So this notebook, which I started using last September of last year. So I started with Mark 12, and here are my other scribbles also. And actually, some of this are from the Old Testament and the New Testament. So this one is still on Mark. I started with here, Mark 8. That was June 25 of last year. See, that's up to 12. So I already have two notes for Mark. Okay, so basically this is how we do our exegesis here in the City of God Ministry. So I hope you enjoy watching just a sample of what is happening here in the City of God Ministry. All right, thank you very much. God bless and keep safe.